on Blitz. I am your co-host, Deb Whitkus, and joining me is the beautiful, my football-loving co-host, Nikki Gist.
Hi, Deb. How are you?
How are you? I was like, are we live? I was
I know.
like, no countdown, no nothing, no intro. We're just throwing it all just to us.
We're just throwing it at you guys, and that's it. So, no intro, just two beautiful blondes popping
There
on
you
screen
go.
for you.
I love it. It's probably actually better.
Yeah, right.
So we have got a great show for you guys this week. As usual, Nikki has her starts and sits. You know, she's the fantasy queen, so everyone listen to what she says. And we'll also do our weekly picks. We also have a special guest, and Nikki and I are so excited. Dr. Jen Welter will be here. She is a pioneer for women in football. She's breaking down barriers and kicking glass. That's glass ceiling, by the way. She was the first woman to play professional football as a running back, the first first NFL female coach for the Arizona Cardinals. She's her doctorate, is an author. I mean, she runs a camp for girls with football. She's insanely talented. And she recently partnered with Barbie to promote their new Women in Sports collection. I mean, my Barbie pink today just because of it. Nikki, how cool is that she has her own Barbie?
I can't believe she has her own Barbie. I'd give anything to have my own Barbie.
Yeah, I
She
mean,
deserves it, though. I'm so excited that she is coming on, and you guys should be too. It's going to be a really, really great show, and we're just going to let Jen shine. Of course, we've got, like Deb said, we got fantasy for you guys, we got picks, but really to get Jen on and have her here for a good chunk of time with us is such a privilege, right? I'm
listen to
really
this for
excited.
everybody, so we're super honored that she's here.
Yes,
So.
we're excited, and we hope you guys enjoy it. So, Deb, how do you feel?
Good. How do you feel?
Well, you know what? I wasn't sure how I was going to feel after the Giants game, but some way, somehow.
Yes, you guys pulled it off. I mean, you were we'll talk about this later too, but you guys were behind 20 points at halftime?
20
And
points.
21 points and then won the game. I mean, Graham Gano was the kicker there. I mean, I've always loved him. So.
I know. He's money. He really is money. Told you guys to take him in fantasy, so I hope that you listened to me and did that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't believe the Giants game. I couldn't believe a lot of the games all week.
No, I know. I think I was texting everybody and in our group chat, and I was just like, I'm quitting this if they lose. Like, I'm just done with everything. Standing in credentials, done with it, done with podcasting. I think we said on Courtney's show, I said I was smashing my laptop. Like, that was it. I was gonna be done with it because I couldn't just do another week of the torture.
What are you feeling about your start and sits this week?
So start and sits for you guys. I am feeling, all right, tell you who I like. I like Raheem Mostert this week. He's going up against a Denver Broncos defense that just allowed Brian Robinson to run for 5 yards, a carry, and 2 touchdowns. So Miami's offense is averaging 30 points per game. So I think Mostert will have a nice week. So I like him this week. I like Hunter Henry this week. Currently tight end number 2. He was tight end number 1 in week 1. His usage has been consistent. He's seeing about 6 targets each game. 11 catches for 108 yards, 2 touchdowns, like 14 points a week in PPR league. So, I think no matter what, I know the Jets have a stingy defense, but the amount of volume that he's getting, I think you have to play him. And I love Matt Stafford, my first fantasy love. I always joke about that. But Rams have been nice in fantasy the past couple of weeks. Stafford has passed for over 300 yards the past 2 weeks against 2 tough defenses. And now he's up against a Bengals defense that's allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing QBs. So those are my starts for this week. My sits for this week: Justin Fields. We just haven't seen, Deb, like what I thought we were going to see at the end of 2022 there with Justin Fields. He's kind of looking worse as a passer to me. And I know they got DJ Moore over there. It's not helping.
I love DJ Moore too. He's rookie.
So do I.
He's such a great guy. I've met him before too.
I thought that was going to be a home run for them, but I guess not. So not into Justin Fields this week. You guys go ahead and sit him. I think the Chiefs are just going to score at will on this Bears defense, and that's what's going to force mistakes, because then Fields is going to have to throw, and he hasn't been looking great throwing. Kyle Pitts, talk about a very frustrating fantasy player. I had him last year. Listen, when you've got Marcus Mariota and you got Ritter throwing you the ball, I understand that expectations can't be too high, but he hasn't seen more than 5 targets so far or score more than 6 fantasy points. So he's a sit for me. And he's
been blocked a lot though, right?
Huh?
He's been blocked a lot, right? Like people, like Desmond Ritter can't throw him the ball. Like he's just
he can't. So those are my 2 main sits for you guys, and hopefully you listen.
And can I ask you a question? Could we sit coaches?
You can't, but I wish you could sometimes.
I want Brennan Staley to be sat this week, and I want to see how the Chargers do. Like, is that possible?
I'm telling you, we talked about it. If he doesn't get it together this year, I think he's got to be done. He's on the hot seat, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Justin Herbert in his last 4 games has passed for 1,130 yards, total of 7 touchdowns, like no interceptions, has a 65.9% completion rate, yet the team is 0-4.
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense, everybody. We're sitting Staley this game. I
wish we could do that. Brought to you by Nikki and Deb. Yes, we're sitting coaches from now on. That would be fun to do.
Well, one coach we never want to sit, and she has stood up for women in sports for years now. Without further ado, let's introduce our special guest for today's show, the first female coach in the NFL and a friend of the show's. So excited that she's here, Dr. Jen Welter. Come on in.
Yay!
There she is. The woman of the hour.
Woman of the hour, yes.
How are you? You can't hear us. We can't hear you. Are you on mute?
Technical difficulties,
guys.
Such as
that's strange.
Oh, she can't hear us. Maybe just go out and come back in.
Jen, you want to come back in one more time? We'll wait for you.
We sure will.
Yeah, right.
We will
hold.
You wait for Jen Welter. You do not. She's coming on your show. You wait, and that is it. But Deb, how did you feel about your Eagles?
Good. I mean, we won.
Win is a win.
I mean, we won. Let's see what. Definitely, less mistakes than the first week. Looking forward to see what they're going to do this week against the Bucs. I'm a little worried about injuries, but other than that, I mean, they went back to basics, which is what needed to happen. They went back to the run game. It wasn't a flashy win by any means, but a win is a win, and we'll take anything right now. I think what the fans have to realize is, like, this is not the Super Bowl team, and I've said this a few times now. This is not the Super Bowl team that we had last year. Like, they're new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new teammates. I mean, they're just taking a little bit more time to gel, but 2-0, they're doing it. So. I think we have a good team, and I definitely think we'll make the playoffs. And I think it's going to be between San Francisco and the Eagles. Right now for that spot in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, might be. All right. Well, we have Jen back, so let's try this again.
There she is. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, gorgeous ladies. Like, I feel like I should be blonde right now. I mean, like darker, and
you don't need to be blonde.
I've always got a little pink, but Like this is a full blonde bombshell dropping bombs of info for the football fans, by the way, because I've been listening in the back and I was like, yep, cosign. eh, you know, I, as a coach, I hope we can't get sat in fantasy because that might be a play calling problem. You know, but other than that, like anybody who's listening knows that these blonde bombshells are literally dropping bombs of information, and I hope you all are taking it in.
Oh, well, hey, there is no better endorsement than Jen Welter right now. Right? So thank you very much. I bow down. But Jen, it's so nice to finally meet you.
Well, it is lovely to finally meet you as well, Nikki. I've known Deb for a while. Nikki, you missed our A Day in the Life program, which I'm just going to say we had all the women out there showing that they not only loved the game, understood the game, but had game. Like physically last year, well, not last year because I was in training camp, but this whole year didn't really feel like a year. I apologize. It's kind of been a time warp, but when the Super Bowl was in LA, so we missed you out there.
Yeah.
But next time we do a fan fight, you'll have to be there. Yes. We gotta see if the physical skills of your game match this mental game. I'm certainly impressed.
It was a great day too. I actually still have the sticker on my car inside, and I see it all the time, and it makes me smile every time I see it. Because like there was 200 women, Jen.
Yeah, about that. We took over the Rose Bowl, Nikki, and taught them all football.
That is so cool. The power of women, because you know what? This past April, I did a sleep out for Covenant House. We slept at MetLife Stadium. It was hosted by Brian Dable's wife, Joe Shane's wife, head coach and general manager of the New York Giants. And it was 200 women, and together we raised $430,000 for Covenant House. And it was a surreal experience to be sleeping on the field. So the power of women, really, honestly, when we all come together and lift each other up and not tear each other down.
Absolutely.
There is nothing better. And I think that's what you learn when you play a sport like football and you see with these guys is the power of team. And, that's one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for not only boys being able to have those experiences, but girls as well, because you learn a lot through team sports and specifically football, right? Like in football, you don't have a great team if you don't have somebody who's willing to lay out, right? Like somebody who's willing to throw a block, somebody who's willing to be the lineman who often are barely seen, definitely not heard, and underappreciated all the time. But guess what? Take them out of the equation and your quarterback is flat on his back. People say, oh, the quarterback didn't play. And you're like, may or may not have been him having front. You didn't notice these men until they were not there, right? And so I think that's the beauty of the game of football, and it transitions so nicely to life, right? Like if you don't have a lead blocker who will take those things on, or if you don't have, someone who will hand the ball off to you and let you run and appreciate that someone else is going to score the touchdown, sometimes you really don't have anything. And if we're not putting that mentality into people's hands, it's a problem. And if more people thought the way that a football team has to function, our society would be better as well.
Oh yeah, I think so. And to your point, I mean, I didn't play football, but my whole life I cheered, I danced, I coach competitive cheer. I know Deb and I are living like same life, just East Coast, West Coast. I taught competitive dance. One thing I can say is I learned that, teamwork, being on a team and your team needing you. Listen, you're not going to be able to compete. If one of your stunt mates is down, then, you better lift that girl up, or if she's having a hard time. Like, you're only as good as the people that you help grow around you. And you need that in any sport, and you play on a team. I think that you learn so much. And then as you get into the real world and as Deb and I know, and we'll get into it. Listen, I started covering the Giants. Deb's covering the Chargers. It's a rough go for a woman. Okay, it's not easy walking in there and being one of the only women in there. So, Jen, I look up to you. I followed your work, and I personally find you an inspiration. So, thank you for everything that you're doing and you continue to do.
Look, it is a team sport, both on and off the field, and when we look at making the sport of football more approachable and more inclusive, it has to be at every level, right? It has to be front office, field, and reporting, because you can do great things, but if you don't have the support of the front office, for example, or the support of those covering the sport, the story just stays there. And the power of a story is in, yes, what's being done, but it's the breadth that it reaches, because as you see something different being done, you open hearts, you open mind, and you open doors, period, point blank. And so if we're not, specifically, I'm going to speak to women, right? If we're not, as women, looking for ways that we can elevate each other, then shame on us, because it is hard. And nothing in this world scares me more than being only. And as first, you are inherently only. And I speak about it often, and people are like, oh, well, no, nothing scares you. And I'm like, if you'd been where I've been, you would know what I know. And it's when you are first and only, because the two are inherently the same. That means there's not mentorship, there's not sisterhood, there's not guidance, and there's nobody to be like, you know what, she's right, right? Like there's no cosign.
Right.
And that still to this day is the thing that at times keeps me up at night. And I tell anybody I know or work with, and this is where the, PhD in psychology comes in, is please, please, please don't suffer in silence, because someone else can help you. They just may not know that you need help. And strong women often, because we've been taught, we have to do everything the men do, make it look great, hold it all together, spinning all the plates, do it backwards and in heels, right? And make that look good, right? We can't just do it. We got to do it and make it look good. Often we think that means without meeting other people around. And I hope we get, especially in sports, because sports drives culture because it's visible, right? Especially in sports, we get to the point where we're setting the example that we need support and love each other, period, point blank.
Well, and Jen, you're obviously an example of women in sports. How did you get started? I want to know that, first of all. How did you find football?
Football has been the love of my life, right? And anybody who knows what the love of your life means, that means it's the highest of highs. It's the joys of joys. It's the lowest of lows. It's the tears, the smiles, the heartbreaks, it's everything. I say I've been married to the game for longer than most people have ever played. It was the first place in this world that they told me boys could do something girls couldn't. I grew up in Vero Beach football, or that's funny. That was a funny slip, like Vero Beach football, because it kind of was the same thing. Vero Beach, Florida, where football is a way of life. And it is Friday Night Lights, right? Like they shut down the town to watch football. And I remember as a little girl, like it's one of those memories that are so vivid that you shouldn't have had so young. But I remember being in the stands, which, we didn't have a pro team close. We didn't have a college team close. So high school football was it. And that high school stadium was the biggest stadium in my world. And those lights were the brightest lights that I'd ever seen. And those players on the field were the closest things I can ever say I'd seen in my young life to real life superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked like real life superheroes. I mean, football players do, right?
They still do. Yeah.
Right? Like we've got the pads and the helmet. And if you look at any superhero, that's what they look like. And I just remember being like, I want to do that. Right? I want to be a superhero too. And it was the first place in the world somebody said, girls don't do that. And it was like, the old robot moment, like, does not compute. Like, this is the game that has taken Sundays from the church and found its way into everybody's Thanksgiving.
And Christmas.
Right, and Christmas.
Yeah.
And it's called America's Game. How could it possibly be America's Game if it didn't have a place for women? And so it was kind of like that unrequited love, right? Like that boy I always had a crush on. I thought he was cute and handsome and everything else. And if one day he would just notice me, maybe I would be that girl, right? Like that's how I think of it. So it didn't crush me. It didn't drive me early. It just didn't fit. And I was always an athlete, played other sports. And then after I graduated college, I got an opportunity to go to an open tryout for the Mass Mutiny, which is now the Boston Renegades. And I made it. And I made a promise to myself that I would step up to every challenge the game put in my way, because I really believed that this was my destiny, right? Like, how could you love a sport for so long and not have it be that driving force? And I put it in front of most of the things that any sane person would think were what life drivers were supposed to be. I mean, we talk about, playing football for $1 a game. We talk about, giving up a promising young business career for a game that doesn't have a place to pay you. We talk about, men are making millions and women at best. Like, it took me 4 years to get to making $1 a game. And even from a relationship standpoint, at one time, trading my engagement ring, which stubbornly, when I got my first Super Bowl ring, it would only fit on that damn finger. Right? Like, people don't realize how thick those rings are. Like, I didn't size the ring finger. Like, I did not. But they're really thick. I sized this one. It was going to be on the opposite hand. And no, when it came, it was too thick. It wouldn't fit here, or maybe I busted my knuckles. That would be probably right either. And the only finger my first Super Bowl ring would fit on was this one. And I was not in a great relationship at that time. And I took off my engagement ring and I replaced it with my Super Bowl ring. And I literally said, I guess I'm married to the game. And that's been the story of my life, where, the fairy tale written for so many girls is that when you grow up, you'll find a handsome prince and you'll get married, and that's the dream. And for me, I passed up that dream to follow this football dream.
So, Jen, I mean, the first woman to play, running back pro football, what was that experience like? Can you take us through that? Because, you saying like how symbolic, you took off, that engagement ring. It was like, okay, I'm married to this and I know everything that's going to come along with it. And, I just on a small scale, I get it too. It's kind of like, oh, you're, girls are supposed to do this. You're not supposed to be in sports. You're not supposed to be this career person. What do you mean you don't have kids? What do you mean you own your own business? All these things we're supposed to do. And it's like, yeah, but I'm following my path because that's what feels right. But oh gosh, don't, you can't step outside of, what society tells you. Oh, you're not supposed to be covering a pro team. You don't know anything about football. What are you doing here? You're just that blonde girl. So
right. The blonde girls who know football.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So to play running back, I mean, what was that like after you made that commitment to yourself? Like, all right, I'm doing this.
Well, first and foremost, like I had at that time when I joined the Texas Revolution to play men's tackle football was I had already played 14 years, I think it was at that point, 14 years of women's pro football. And I always say pro because we couldn't afford the professional, right? Like that was out of our budget. We're making $1 a game, like at
Right.
So it is the highest level. It is what we have, but we're not making men's professional money. So let's just say it was pro football. I had at that point done everything that I knew I could do and some that I didn't even know I could do in football. I was an 8-time Pro Bowler. I had 4 Super Bowl rings in women's tackle football. I had 2 gold medals on the first and second women's U.S. national team. And after we came back from to Finland and had won our second gold medal, we were, because they paused the season, right? Because, our women's season didn't dictate international games, but they paused our season. We came back, had to come to playoffs, and we lost in the championship game. The Dallas Diamonds, one of the iconic franchises in women's tackle football history. And our owner told us before that game, like, we better play our best game because that would be our last game as a Diamond, right? So all of these women who had dedicated their lives to football were on the street. We're almost like homeless kids who don't know what to do, right? Like, we'll play football for food, right? Like we've given everything to this big, hairy dream that nobody thought was possible. And now we were just told, like, it's not possible for you. You don't have a place anymore. And I mean, it was mind blowing. And so I get this call from a team named the Texas Revolution. It was indoor football. They played in the indoor football league. For those of you who know the movie, like Kurt Warner, right? And they talked about the Iowa Barnstormers in the indoor football league. This is the same league that Kurt Warner played in. I get a call from that league, from this team in Texas, and they want to meet with me. I have no idea why they want to meet with me, right? Like, I'm this 5'2" female player who, doesn't understand this. And I get in, and they were like, Jen Welter, we think you're fantastic. Like, we would love it if you would, go through a day of training camp with our guys. And I remember, like, go through a day of training camp. Like, and I have this problem, and Deb's known me for a while, so she knows this problem of mine. And sometimes it's open mouth and insert cleat, right? Because the passion speaks louder than the mouth should if the brain was actually engaged.
Yeah.
But at moments when those things don't add up, my mouth is very loud and it's always very honest. And I don't.
This is one of the things I love about you, by the way. Not everybody's like that.
Yeah, but Deb, you know that about me. Like, there are
Nikki's like that too, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm like that too. It's like, I didn't get called all types of names.
Right. Like, and there are. This was probably the first time, right? Like, I'm coming from a world where women are making $1 a game, where we've won our second gold medal in women's tackle football, and nobody gave a damn that we did. We all had to pay to play to represent the USA in America's game. And I was mad, right? We now don't have a place to play anymore. And I'm back here, and this indoor football league wants me to come out, and they want me to smile for the cameras and throw my diamonds up and, catch a pass or two and, make the cameras happy and make them look like they did something that was woke and put my whole career on being a token. And I was pissed off. And I was like, oh, so you just, you want me to like smile for the cameras, do all this. And like, the owner was like, yeah, we think it would be amazing. And I was like, it's an insult to me as an athlete who just won my second gold medal. And if you want to do anything with me and my football team, or me and this football team, either I go step for step, hit for hit with all these guys, or I do nothing at all. And I was like, oh. The second it was like, dear God, I probably just got myself killed. But I also knew without a shadow of a doubt, it was going to happen, right? Like once the words were spoken, it was a truth that could not be unsaid. And I didn't have any delusions of grandeur. I didn't have any like, I'm going to run all over these guys. It was like, how do we ever change the game of football if we can go out and literally beat the world and come back to this country where it's America's game and nobody cares? And I thought, I guess this is it. And so I went into it, scared and angry and wanting to set the record straight. And, I honestly was willing to die for the fact that we as women should be able to be on the same field. And I never really had this master plan on where it could go or what it would mean. But I remember, the coach, Chris Williams, and he's still a dear friend to this day. Like, we called him Coach Dub. And Coach Dub, like at times he would pull me aside and he'd just look at me because he was not behind this idea at the forefront. He's a football purist and he was pissed off. And until I pushed back and basically was like, this is a bull. Then all of a sudden he got this smile, right? Like he was like, oh, maybe might have some stuff to her, right? Like she might be about something. Like if I was just like, yeah, okay, let's do it, he would have been like off my feet, right? Like he would have just, rolled over me. And when I said that, he just kind of was like, but the thing he said to me at one point that I will never forget is he said, if I could take the heart out of your chest and put it in every one of these men, we would be undefeated. And I went into it with that mentality. And he even said to me at one time, like, can you even imagine if you made it out of training camp and you made the actual team and you like made it through the season? Like, can you imagine? Right. And I did. And I would say even bigger than that, we did, because it changed from me going in thinking it was me versus the guys and them teaching me that it was us versus the world. And that was one of the most powerful times in my life.
Amazing. What pivoted you from that position to being the first female coach in the NFL?
It's a great question, Deb, and not an easy one.
I know. Sorry.
After literally surviving that, playing for a year, I lovingly say it aged me dog years, right? Like I traded 1 for 7, at least in terms of my body. But it was the trust and respect and being a part of the team with those guys that caught the attention of a new head coach who came in the following season. His name's Wendell Davis, former Dallas Cowboy. And we were at an event. And you know how it is when you haven't seen people you love in a long time. And I hadn't seen the guys since season was over. And like, spoiler alert, I had survived the year. I'd done more than anybody thought possible. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that again, right? Like, I can't give up 14 years for 2, right? I survived the season. I'm not testing it. I'm good. So I was like, I'm done, right? And Wendell saw how the guys responded to me at an event. And he was like, who is this girl that all my guys love? And one of the other coaches who knew me was like, Coach, that's your running back. And he was, and we've talked about this. These are his words, not mine. He was like, you know, I was caught so off guard. Like, I thought the guys just tolerated you. I never imagined that they would love you. And it was that how they responded and the respect that caught his attention, called me over, and he was like, you know, grilled me just on football, what was good with the team, what wasn't. And, you know, me being the person that I am, like, I was mad. Like, I'm going to burn this place down. I'm not going to be here next year. And you don't treat these guys well. And that's not okay with me. Right? Like, you say they get meals included with playing on this. Well, they get a $5 meal voucher to Arby's. That, you want to know why they're not playing well? They're hungry. Okay? Like, just things like that. And I was like, you know what? I'll like the match. I'll burn it down because I'm out. Right? It was like, throw the deuces up.
Yeah.
And the next day he called me and he's like, all my defensive coordinator and I could talk about is how you have to coach this football team. And I was like, no. He was like, what do you mean no? And I was like, no. Girls don't coach football. Because never had it crossed my mind that all of the things that I'd done, even being the football history that I'd had and how much I'd dedicated, at that time, women didn't coach football and they certainly didn't coach pro football. So I had no delusions of grandeur, no master plan. Like, I was like, no, we don't do that. And Wendell said to me, he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said, no. And I hung up on him. And the next day he called me back and told me about myself. And he said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity? You're taking this job. And I said, yeah. He said, good. I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit.
Yeah.
And what the? Really? What? Now I have this job that I'm not. And I was like, but I don't know how to coach football. And he said, I can teach you how to coach football. I can't teach that. I can't teach what I saw. I can't teach how those guys respect you and they love you. Like, that's special. And so I end up coaching that team. This was 2015, spring season. And while I'm coaching that team, another woman, you know, killed it. And that would be the first female ref in NFL history, my girl and dear friend, Sarah Thomas. And when Sarah Thomas was hired, a reporter, this is why I love reporters, y'all, got to ask the tough questions. A reporter asked Bruce Arians if he could ever see a woman coaching in the NFL. And his response was, the second a woman proves that she can make these guys better, she'll be hired. And so here I am coaching in indoor football. And I went to my head coach and talked to him about it. And at that time, Wendell had already been let go because he probably pushed against the system too much. So the original defensive coordinator who knew me and loved me, Devin, said, well, we should call Bruce. Can you get me his number? And I remember thinking, like, dude, you played in the NFL. Don't y'all have like a black book? Like, isn't that easier for you? Right? Like, why am I getting? But thankfully we had to practice really early in the morning. So we finished practice and I go and I was like, I don't know if I could get his number. Maybe I could. And I called the Cardinals on behalf of myself with no real game plan, as if I wasn't myself. But my head coach wanted to talk to their head coach about these comments that he made about a woman coaching in the NFL, and how, though it wasn't the NFL, there was already a woman coaching in men's pro football, and she could probably help make these guys better. And I ended up working my way to Bruce's assistant, who his name's Wesley. He's a great dude. And Wes said, I think Bruce would really want to take this call. Let me get your head coach's number. And I thought I had gotten blown off. I'm not going to lie. But I thought it was really cool that I called the Cardinals, right? Like at that point, the closest I'd ever been to an NFL sideline, like the nosebleed sections, right? Like the top row that maybe you got like on a discount, or like because they didn't want to go. Like that was the best I'd ever been into an NFL, stadium. And so I was just, I can't believe I called the Cardinals. Like,
right.
Didn't think it was going to turn into anything. But then about 2 weeks later, I walked into practice and Devin said, "You'll never believe who I talked to yesterday." It was Bruce Arians. Said, "Tell me about this girl."
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's a wild story.
It is wild.
It is. You got to bet on yourself sometimes.
You absolutely do. And you got to assume that you're going to get a lot of no's.
Oh, yeah.
But you just might get a yes. And
only takes one.
Yeah.
It only takes one. And interestingly enough, like Bruce eventually invited me out to OTAs, and he even said, like, I don't even know if I can make this happen, right? I've got to get a lot of yeses in order for this to happen. And I don't know. But I want you to know it's in my heart to try. And so there was no other team that I called. It wasn't like I pounded the phones for all 32. It was Bruce Arians, and it was his will to change the game that made it happen. And he was inspired by a college coach he had met when he was when she was at Hines Junior College, and her name was Dot Murphy. And funny enough, Dot Murphy is very close to Sarah Thomas. Mm-hmm. So Dot Murphy inadvertently had a role in my career and where I ended up, and Sarah Thomas and where she ended eventually coming together. And I didn't realize it until I did an interview. Again, this is why I love reporters, and said the name Dot Murphy, and Sarah was listening, and she was like, "My Dot Murphy? Like, my Dot Murphy." And she called me and she was like, "Sis, you're never going to believe this." And so that's one of the reasons why to this day I try to be so outspoken and honest and open in support of other women in the game, because you never know where being open about these stories and how doors open are going to impact other people's career trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jen, you're coaching, right? What, if any, adversity did you experience? Was it tough being a woman out on the field? I mean, I'm sure over time it got easier, but what was it like at first?
Just because also too, like we're in press boxes, and it's difficult for us as women reporters to in there, like we can't even imagine what it would be.
It's a boys' club in there. I'm telling you, I'll walk in, hey, good morning. Nobody says a word. Yes, I'm looking at you, New York media. You don't say a word. There's like 2 of you who talk to me, and it's like, hey, it's like half a head nod, right? You just get this look like, what are you doing here?
Well, I haven't been in those press boxes. I I've been in like one or two, and I make sure to like go up and high five and hug everybody because I just like to be strategically stupid sometimes. You know, and make it really hard to ignore the fact that I'm there, right? But in terms of coaching, it was really interesting because everybody assumed it would be the players that were the problem. Never have had a problem with players. You know, I think I am very actively vocal on behalf of players because of how amazing they've been to me in situations where, you know, people thought that the guys wouldn't be supportive. They always were. So that's where I would start and say, you know, I don't really have problems with them. I remember probably the first big test though, was a moment, I think it was day one, and I was talking to a guy we used to call Pound Cake. And Pound Cake was, his mom sent Pound Cake and he brought it to all the coaches. So Pound Cake was asking me about something, right? And I'm talking to him and I'm like, hey, you know, you just got to do X, Y, and Z. And Lorenzo Alexander walks by. I mean, so is a legend, right? Like, I get it. And I watched
Awesome.
Pound Cake's mind go, or like mind and face go like, Zoe, right? Like, it was like Zoe.
Yeah.
Like in slow motion. And he was like, everything I was saying just all of a sudden was like, and he goes to Zoe and he was like, Zoe, you know, what do you think I should do? X, Y, and Z. And I'll never forget when Zoe was like, you know what you need to do is listen to what coach told you right there, because everything she said was spot on. And I just remember going like, because I mean, but that's a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Right. If Zoe had just said, yeah, Rook, I got you here, let me take you under my wing. Yeah. He didn't even have to say anything about me. Right. All he had to do was like do a strong swim move and be out. Right. Like, yeah, let's go.
Right.
And it would have said everything without saying anything. But the fact that he redirected him back to me, like, I was just like, oh. And all of a sudden Pound Cake was like, man, coach, did you hear that? I was like, I did. Right. Like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So players, if you can make them better, they'll listen. And not more importantly, but like in conjunction with that, if you treat them as great people, or like, and put their humanity first, like, coaching football becomes easy, right? Like, we all look at the game as being the most important thing in the world. The game is not the most important thing in the world. The most important thing in the world are the things in the world. The game allows us to do a lot of things in the world. But like, when you step out of those white lines, that's what's going to be there until you're hopefully 175 years old, right? Like, that's your family, that's your kids, that's your identity, that's your church, whatever it is, right? But those are the big things. And when you acknowledge, love, and adore those things, and you build a relationship built on love and trust, me telling you I need you to get to heel depth and squeeze the line when they slant, that's easy, right? Like, hey, you know what? Lance slanted this way, and then you open up a new gap to the inside because you were too wide. Like, if you have love and trust, that's easy, right? And I always say, like, the love and trust comes into play here. Perfection really only exists in intention. It's the only place it can be. We can be perfect in our intent. New information, new this, new that. It messes up our intent. Like, the offense wants to mess up the intent of the defense. We want to get to the quarterback every time. So they're going to do something different. I'm going to give you the best information that I have when I had it, right? So my intention can be perfect. Then if we have a good relationship where it's like, hey, if I told you to do it, it's on me. If you freestyled, it's on you. Then we can work together to improve our execution constantly. But our intention can be perfect. It's the love and trust that allows us to get past those wrinkles and hopefully get better together. So I've never really had the troubles with players in the way that people expect it. And I like to lead with that. Where I think things get more difficult is like the external perception versus the internal reality, right? Like the media, I don't even know what all they were saying at that time because I made sure I didn't listen. But I do know that I got snippets, and some of it was like, she's the, feminist hero that football needs, right? Like Esquire said that at one point. Cool, amazing. Or she's the death of football because there shouldn't be any females there. Awesome. Let me crawl under my table and suck on my thumb, right? Like those things can either elevate us to this superhero status or crumble us, and they change in milliseconds, depends on who's there. So I think, and that's the external narrative that's trying to be driven, that doesn't know what the day-to-day is like.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was the hardest part, right? And how do you balance doing the job and also honoring the fact that this is different, it is history, and it does mean something to not only the culture of football, but culture in general. And that to me was really the hardest part, and still is.
Well, Jen, you also recently made history with, Barbie has a line that just came out, their new sports collection, and you partnered with them on it, and there it is.
There it is. It's so cool. Oh my God.
I mean,
and it's wait, I'm doing this backwards, but it's a reporter over. Oh wait, that's the coach with the coach over here, and then the reporters over here, and obviously you then have the referee and the general manager in the middle. So yeah, we've got those for you.
So
but go ahead, Deb.
Now, how did that come to fruition? And I mean, is this a dream come true for you?
I said to somebody, and it was funny because one of my friends was like, "Oh, Jen, that was so you." I'm like, it's like this big, shiny plastic dream that I didn't know I was permitted to dream, right? As a young, almost probably you would say a little bit of a tomboy, although I don't love that term, right? Like a junior athlete who spent many more hours.
Uh-oh. There we go. Wait.
Did we get her back? Did she hit mute by mistake?
Maybe.
But no, how cool is it to have a Barbie doll? There she.
I wish I could have a Barbie doll. Like, have you ever gone to the American Girl, like right there in right in Times Square and stuff? And I was like, oh man, I want to design one that, like, I want to have a doll after me. But to have a Barbie, I mean, how cool! But I can't think of anybody more deserving, really.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, and also to that point, like, there's
she's back.
Sorry, someone called. I'm on my phone. My computer died yesterday, so I'm like literally on the celly. Hi.
Love it.
But I it's one of those big, shiny, plastic, bright pink dreams that I wasn't permitted to have as a young girl, right? Like Barbie was here, right? It was this icon of what a girl should, could, and would look like with the right outfits and the right things. And I was an athlete who didn't necessarily identify. I mean, I had them, and I had this talk with Barbie. I'm like, part of what makes this to me so iconic is it opens up what girls can look at and see as an idea of a dream, right? Like each of those Barbies, because, in the movie, they talk about an unboxing, right? So each of these Barbies in this package to me represents a dream that a little girl can unbox and put into action. I, as a girl who literally turned down my first football coaching offer because I'd never thought it was possible would never have taken the job because I couldn't see it as possible. But now, haven't we, by putting the Barbies in this box, giving girls a way that they can unbox these dreams in real life? So it's not strange, right? They've been socialized in a different way to see that a Barbie could be so many different things. Yes, she could be a fashionista. She could also be a referee, or she could be a coach. Like, I wouldn't have seen that as a little kid. So I didn't have permission to necessarily dream it via Barbie, right? Or in society, see a woman in football, because that's not just Barbie. That was real life, that it wasn't anywhere. And yet now these girls get to enact and dream about the world in a way that I didn't. And so it's this big shiny dream that I wasn't permitted to even dream, that I could be a Barbie, because those things didn't seem like they could be the same to me. And now they are. And I kind of go, really? And like, I have these young girls who are like, I just bought Coach Jen's Barbie. And I'm like, well, it's Coach Barbie. It's not necessarily mine. But they're like, no, it's you, Coach.
It's
and I'm
you.
like,
Right.
I'm like, but I don't know how to say that, right? Like, that's because it's been that iconic brand that I think for all of us girls, whether we had them and engaged with them to the same extent, wanted to be able to enact ourselves in the real world. And now we have a way, whether it's a coach or a general manager or a referee or a reporter, like these blonde Blitz Barbies right here, can look at the world and function in the world in a whole new way. And so I'm still kind of over the moon about it. Like, I don't even really know how to say it. But it came about, and I know that was your original question, Deb, in a really organic, cool way. It wasn't, mastermind from some lab of like Coach Jen and, whatever. Like, it was a very natural narrative. And when Barbie did their viral campaign of, this Barbie is a.
Oh, yeah, I did that. It was so fun.
Right. And so many of us did. I did it just like everybody else. And I was like, this Barbie is a football coach. And I don't know if I could say who it was, but I'll just say a high-powered person in Mattel, who was actually a man, which I love that, actually, because like, you are a super supportive Ken ally. You are Ken of, right?
Yes.
Saw my post on LinkedIn and said, I love football coach Barbie. And I was like, okay. And I did what I really never do. I was like, all right, so how do we make this a reality? And he was like, I would love to introduce you to the Barbie team. And to their credit, like, the women in sports, like, collection was already in the works. It just turned out that we were able to collaborate and partner and do all this really amazing stuff. But they had that vision. I can't take credit for that, but I can take credit for just actually helping to put people to what they had in the works. So
that's so awesome. Well, Jen, you got to take a lot of credit for a lot of things, because so many of us look up to you. And I, like I said, I know we started the show this way. I just can't thank you enough for everything that you've done and that you continue to do. And you are an ally for women in this field. And please continue to break these glass ceilings for us, because, there's a bunch of us up and coming. Sometimes I'll get it and they'll DM me and they say, oh, Nikki, you're such an inspiration. You get on there and you don't take any, shit from anybody, and you speak your mind. And I couldn't do that. And it's like, yes, you can. You just be your own version of you. So we thank you so much for coming on, and everybody go get the sports collection Barbie. Everybody go get it, please.
And absolutely do. Like, I love that you even said that, Nikki, because I think what's powerful about this Barbie collection is not just, the things that people see on the surface, but when a brand like Barbie and a company like Mattel puts their product and their weight and their movement behind positive things, they set the standard for others to do it. And when we look at women in sports and women's sports, right, because they work hand in hand. The pushback we've often gotten is a financial one, right? It's like, well, women's sports don't make the same money. Well, let's make the dollars make sense. Let's, as consumers, put our dollars where our passion is, right? Like, go buy that ticket, go see that game, go share that story, go buy that collection. Don't be afraid to do it, because 87% of the disposable income lies with women. So there's no damn reason why women should be hurting for dollars, because if we actually collectively take our money and spend it where our passions are, we can put the money where we want it to be. And supporting girls and women in sports, in whatever that looks like, whether it's on the field or in the broadcast booth, we need to make our opinions matter. And for brands to see it and to feel it, let's give them ROI on their investment. Let's do it socially. Let's champion it. Let's champion each other. And let's also make them go, damn, that was a really good business decision. Let's not just trade on emotion. Let's make the bottom line tell a story that is so loud and so fierce that it is undeniable, and that we won't keep talking about women like myself, who the most I ever made in women's sports playing tackle football as one of the best in the world was $1 a game.
Jen, we have to wrap it up today. Thank you so much for
coming
on. Yeah, this was such an amazing interview.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was awesome.
And we hope to have you back at some point as well, because always a pleasure.
Anytime,
obviously. You always
anytime, lady, especially when my hair is a little blonder.
We can go pink too. So
I was like the dark horse today in the interview, but that's okay. I've been the dark horse a lot in my career.
That's okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jen. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. What an amazing interview. And we will be back next week, Wednesday, 8:00, the Blonde Blitz. Please like and subscribe to Fantasy Sports Corporation. Until next week, we are out. Go Giants.
See you guys. Go Birds.